While the number may be a little bit of an exaggeration, why is it that my flight instructor examiner told me that most flight instructor candidates, including me, get this simple cross-country question wrong on their check rides? Welcome back to Grant's Pilot Advice. My name is Grant. Today, we're going to be talking about cross countries and a cross-country question that you may get on your check ride. We're going to go over the question, we'll go over the regulations, then we'll go over the answer. To go a little bit further, we'll talk about logging cross-country flight time and talk about cross-country requirements for each stage in flight training. First, let's get to the question. Let's say you're a flight instructor and your private pilot student shows you this cross-country that they've got for their check ride. They start at point A and they have a landing 30 nautical miles away at point B. From point B, they go 55 nautical miles to point C and land at point C. Then they fly from point C 40 nautical miles back to point A and land at point A. Is this considered a cross country? Before we answer that, we must define what a cross country is and look at some of the regulations. I'm going to use the online version from ecfr.gov, but you can also get a paper copy of the FAR-AIM anywhere you can get aviation publications or at a flight school. So what we want is in part 61, which covers airmen. 61.1, which I'll show on the screen, defines cross-country time as time acquired during flight conducted by a person who holds a pilot certificate. It's conducted in an aircraft. It includes a landing at a point other than the original point of departure. It involves the use of dead reckoning, pilotage, electronic navigation aids, radio aids, or other navigation systems to navigate to the landing point. Based on this regulation, this flight should count as a cross-country, right? Well, technically yes, but the flight is actually for a private pilot certificate. So if we read further down in 61.1, we can see that for the purpose of meeting aeronautical experience requirements for a private pilot's license, commercial pilot's license, or instrument rating, a cross-country is defined as the time acquired during a flight in an appropriate aircraft that includes a point of landing at least 50 nautical miles straight line distance from our original point of departure. It involves the use of dead reckoning, pilotage, electronic navigation aids, radio aids, or other navigation systems to navigate to the landing point. For the purposes of meeting the requirements for a private pilot certificate, this does not count as a cross-country. And that's because starting at point A, we never land at a point that is greater than 50 nautical miles straight line distance from our initial point of departure. Let's take another look at our diagram. If we start at point B and land at point C, then go and land at point A, and then go back and land at point B, this would be considered a legal cross-country for our certification requirements. That's because taking off from point B and landing at point C takes us at least 50 nautical miles straight line distance from our original point of departure. Now we know what a cross-country is, so how do we go about logging the flights and the flight time? Well, we have to go back to our regulations. As long as the flight meets our requirements, we can log that flight as a cross-country, and we can log the time associated with it. So if we go on a flight that is 50 nautical miles from our original starting point, but it takes us 3 hours because we're doing maneuvers on the way there and on the way back, does that count as a cross-country? Yes and no. We can log the flight time as cross-country flight time because we did land at a point 50 nautical miles from our original starting point. However, the intent is not to do a cross-country. The intent is to do maneuvers with a cross-country element. So we can log the flight time as cross-country flight time, but we cannot use it as a cross-country for certification purposes. What are the cross-country requirements for each rating? Private pilot can be found in 61.109, and there is a dual night cross-country and a solo day cross-country. The night cross-country must be a flight in excess of 100 nautical miles total distance at night, and the solo day cross-country must be a flight of at least 150 nautical miles total distance with full stop landings at least 3 points, and one segment length must be at least 50 nautical miles. For Part 141 students, the night cross-country is the same, but the solo day cross-country is a flight in excess of 100 miles total distance, full stop landings at least 3 points, and one segment length of at least 50 nautical miles. For a commercial pilot certificate, 61.129 requires 2 cross countries. They are 2 hours in length with a total straight line distance of 100 nautical miles from the original point of departure. One flight has to be done during the day and the other flight has to be done at night. For Part 141 students, 141 Appendix D requires the same flights. These solo requirements for commercial pilots can be found in 61-129, and that requires one flight with a total distance of at least 300 nautical miles, landings at a minimum of 3 points, and a total straight line distance of at least 250 nautical miles from the original point of departure. For Part 141 students, 141 Appendix D requires one flight with landings at a minimum of 3 points and one segment length in excess of 250 nautical miles. For instrument pilots, 6165 requires one cross-country flight to be filed under instrument flight rules, which is at least 250 nautical miles total distance along airways or by directed routing from an air traffic control facility, contains an instrument approach at each airport, and contains at least 3 different kinds of instrument approaches. For Part 141 students, 141 Appendix C requires the same cross-country flight. But one segment length must be at least 100 nautical miles. Today we talked about what a cross-country is, looked at regulations which define cross-countries, talked about how to log cross-country flight time and cross-country flights, and looked at requirements for cross-countries at different points during flight training. So if anyone asks you a question about cross-countries on your check ride, similar to the one at the beginning of this video, you should have no problem answering and determining adherence to the regulations. If I missed anything, feel free to let me know. If you have any questions on this video or suggestions for future videos, leave me a comment. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future videos. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and never stop learning.